You're watching College Sports Rush's Sports Bettor's Paradise on the Bet Rivers Network.
All right, Jimmy, Ott and Paul Stone, it's time for the NFL Draft. Let's get right to it, Paul. We'll start off with a double barrel pick. We have our best bets for this year's draft. And, you know, when we start off with this, the sports books, they may whine a little bit at times, especially after this the March Madness this year. But they generally win, okay? And one of the things that they generally win is because most of the people, they inflate the favorites a little bit, and the dogs are a little bit more profitable. The unders are a little bit more profitable. People bet, people wager on what they want to pull for as much as what they think is going to happen. But the other thing is they always whine about the NFL draft. There are heavy stipulations based on the different states and the mobile setups. And in Nevada, you are shut off. No more bets 24 hours before that first pick on Thursday evening. So Wednesday evening at that time, the window is closed for the duration, not even a consideration for in-draft betting. So let's get to that. And so one thing is we kind of flip my handicap, and I'm like a dog or pass, generally speaking. College basketball, I'll lay some numbers at home with that home court value, but still, I'm not afraid to lay some big prices. And let's start off with a big price, and I just don't see how this is not going to happen. There was a lot of conversation about Abdul Carter being the first non-quarterback taken, but it looks like, the common sense has prevailed here. Travis Hunter has done some historical things. There's a lot of sizzle to the Colorado program in Boulder with Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. I got that. But this guy is all stake. I mean, Travis Hunter's just done some historical things. His ball skills are phenomenal. He can play either side of the ball. And the Cleveland Browns may need him more on the offensive side than what we thought he would play more downs. But both Paul and I have the second overall pick at Bet Rivers to beat Travis Hunter at minus 305. But this is it's a little gimme, a little layup to start out at a price here, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, certainly minus 305 is a concern. We're laying a heavy premium there, if you will. But this is a guy who hasn't missed yet. You're talking about Travis Hunter, the dynamic two-way standout from Collins Hill High School there in Sewanee, Georgia. I mean, he came out of high school with 5-star expectations. He was the number 2 overall recruit behind Walter Nolen in the 2022 ESPN Top 300, signed with Deion Sanders and Jackson State out of high school. He initially committed to Florida State, so I'm sure the Seminoles would have liked to have had Travis Hunter, but he plays one season at Jackson State, transfers to Colorado when Sanders takes that job and plays his last 2 seasons in Boulder. And I mean, the biggest question with Hunter entering this draft, and it's a good problem to have, is where do you play him? You know, you've got the cornerback and you've got the wide receiver, and that certainly enhances his draft stock. If maybe he isn't quite up to NFL standards, which I think he'll probably be up to NFL standards in both, but if he isn't up to NFL standards at one position, he has the other to fall back on, and the most likely scenario is that he's going to play one position predominantly and then see spot duty in the other. So he's just a guy that really seems to have a great upside. He has a little chance of being a bust or a disappointment, if you will, and everything just seems to point. This is, like you said, the books don't like to book this event because it's an information-based handicap, and all the information seems to point towards the Browns selecting Hunter with the number 2 overall pick after Miami takes Cam Ward. So he's a guy that would energize the Browns fan base, and after last year's 3-14 showing, they certainly could use some energizing. A steep price, but I like Hunter to go number 2 overall at minus 305.
Man, especially these quarterbacks, you just don't know who's going to hit and who is going to bust. But I mean, there's no such thing as a lock. But damn it, Travis Hunter, if he doesn't succeed in the NFL, I will be shocked. I could tell you that. And I envisioned him more as a cornerback. I think the list of elite cornerbacks is a lot shorter than the list of elite wide receivers, and they certainly can have impact like Sauce Gardner did his rookie season at the Jets, Stingley with the Texans, and Surtain with the Broncos. But Cleveland might shift him more to wide receiver because of their need there on the offense. But we will see. I will be shocked if he doesn't have a very, very long and successful career. Paul, let's get to your pick, and let's go to the second quarterback drafted. And after Ward, it was supposed to be Sanders. It was supposed to be, 1 and 1A. Which one were they going to draft first? But now you hear that Sanders may be sliding. Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss is a name that is getting a lot of attention. You've kind of zeroed in on a price here, plus 300, the second quarterback drafted. You're looking at the Ole Miss quarterback, Jackson Dart.
Yeah, Ward's virtually a shoo-in to be the first quarterback taken and the first overall selection. So the question becomes, who will be the second quarterback taken in the 2025 NFL draft? And for a good while, up until not that long ago, Shadeur Sanders was considered, at least a fair, if not solid, possibility to be the draft's top overall pick. But in recent weeks, certainly his draft stock has slipped somewhat. There's even some, I don't think this is going to happen, but some have even suggested or hinted that he could fall completely out of the first round. And first of all, I know you know this and most of our listeners do as well, but this is smoke and mirrors season. These NFL guys, they'll feed the guys who cover their teams and so forth and cover the NFL beat with stories to try to give head fakes, and I don't think too many people are going to be. They have nothing to gain by being just completely honest and frank about, hey, if he's here, this is who we're going to take it, 2 or 3 or whatever. They're not going to do that. So there's a lot of head faking. It is smoke and mirrors season, so hard to determine who and what to believe. So I'll ask myself this question. Initially, do I think Sanders will fall out of the first round? And I already answered that no. And then the other question, do I think Ole Miss's Jackson Dart will go ahead of Sanders and be the second quarterback selected? And I'll answer that saying probably not. But it's all about the price. And we get plus 300 on Jackson Dart to be the second quarterback selected in the NFL draft. And I just love the price. Sanders' draft stock has slipped. Clearly, while Dart's has risen, the Saints could select Dart at number 9, or they could select Sanders at number 9 after starter Derek Carr recently revealed that he has a shoulder injury, might miss the entire 2025 season. So I think they're likely to stay at 9. They're going to take either Dart or Sanders more than likely, and I think Dart at plus 300 is too attractive. So I'm taking Jackson Dart plus 300 to be the second quarterback drafted in the 2025 NFL draft.
Speaking of the Saints and that Carr injury, it's getting a lot of attention now and how it will impact the draft. And I could tell you one thing, for a guy who's had an average, mediocre type of career at both stops, so with the Raiders and the Saints, that Saints fan base cannot stand him. They just can't. Maybe part of it's following Drew Brees, whatever it is. He is despised by that fan base, and they are dying for a quarterback. And you talk about a general manager who has a little bit longer leash than most. It's certainly Mickey Loomis. Nobody can maintain his the scoreboard and the general manager. That cap room. And they're dead last and by a lot every year, and that's their scoreboard. And he is last every year, but he is maintained with it. Interesting ownership structure to that league. There are no heirs to that. There are no children. Before Tom Benson passed, he made it very clear with a public letter to the Times-Picayune, the longtime newspaper in New Orleans, that they basically are excommunicated from our family. So there are no heirs. It's being left to the Benson Foundation. And so it's an interesting setup for Miss Gail Benson in the ownership of the New Orleans Saints, and probably a little bit too close to Mickey Loomis as a longtime friend in owner. But he needs to move on for the best interest of the New Orleans Saints. You mentioned Walter Nolen as the number 2 overall prospect in that recruiting class. We talk about the uncertainties about the pick in the draft and projecting players to the next level. It might be even worse going from high school to pro. But this is a guy who performed at a high level as well. And not the number 1 overall graded defensive lineman, but he's clearly number 2. And he did perform. It was it was highly publicized about the NIL or payer play that he got to go to Jimbo Fisher in Texas A&M, and then what Lane Kiffin paid to get him to Ole Miss, but he has performed. And now, you know what, another thing, too, is the NFL is like a lot of industries, and even more so, they mimic success. And, well, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, that defensive front is a good place to start. So, clearly the number 2 rated defensive lineman to be drafted in the first round, it's a price, minus 225 at the yes, but I've got Walter Nolen, the defensive lineman out of Ole Miss, to be taken. And he might slip all the way to Buffalo late in the first round, which they are probably going to take a defensive lineman. But Walter Nolen, if a talent like him does not get picked in the first round, I'll be shocked, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, signed with Texas A&M out of high school, number 1 recruit in that class of 2022. And one thing that Nolen adds is he's a disruptive force who gets penetration from the defensive tackle position, which is what you look for. He either had 5.5 or 6.5 sacks last year for Ole Miss, so that's good penetration, a real good sack number for an interior defensive lineman. So Walter Nolen, certainly I can see him going in the first round, even though you're laying a little over $2. Guy's got some talent. He's played at a high level. You can't question the competition. So I'll be rooting for you there, and he could be an outstanding player with a long career in the National Football League.
And you mentioned his production, but keep in mind how many double teams he attracted throughout his career in the SEC as well. Let's move on. And talking about Shadeur Sanders, his over-under now is at 8.5. Paul, you're looking at the over, which is lane juice right now, considerable juice, minus 225. That should tell you about the information starting to leak out about Shadeur as he continues to slide. Of course, a lot of attention on the Saints at 9, but now a lot of people wonder with the Steelers, are they really going to go to battle with the quarterbacks that they have, or are they going to try and take Shadeur? So you like the over 8.5 Sanders at to go over minus 225.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously touched on my position regarding Sanders in my recommendation of Jackson Dart as the 2nd overall quarterback selected. But again, as you mentioned, Sanders' draft stock is clearly dipped with some of the concerns, frankly, centering around his perceived brashness and arrogance, for lack of better terms. But I'll say this, there's plenty of quarterbacks and other players in the NFL who are brash and arrogant. So he's not alone there. So I'm not sure this is the primary reason for Sanders' fall, but it does certainly add another layer. Trades could throw a wrench in this. That's the one kind of the unknown. You'll start hearing a lot about trades over the next week and few days. So they could the trades could lay a wrench in our best laid plans here. But it just seems right now in the current draft order that it's highly unlikely, reading the different mock drafts and reading beat writers and so forth, that Sanders is going to go any earlier than 9th to the Saints. You've got a guy here, Sanders, who I think his arm strength, there's some difference of opinion on it, but I think it's a little bit less than elite. His upside, many are saying, is maybe a little bit less than some of the other quarterbacks in the draft. And then we've talked about his attitude. That certainly turns some teams off at some level. So I'm going to take Shadeur Sanders to go over 8.5 at minus 2.25.
So, all right, let's get to some of the teams and maybe their needs. And, boy, one that really sticks out to me, talking about the Miami Dolphins, the position of the Dolphins' first drafted player, and they're there situated at 13. And I'm not so sure if the way things fall that they might not even move up to get their guy. And it all revolves around Tua Tagovailoa. If you watch the Miami Dolphins, it's very clear. The data does not lie. With Tua as a starting quarterback, they are 40-24 at a 625 winning percentage. Without him, they are 7-13, a 350 winning percentage. And man, some of that 7-13 are extremely ugly. So I mean, it is a difference. And Tua may not be an elite quarterback, but he makes all the difference in the world for the Dolphins. Another move for the Dolphins in the offseason. Often injured offensive tackle. He's really good when he plays with the Saints and with the Dolphins. But Terron Armstead is now gone. So So you want to protect Tua? The damn straight you want to protect him. Certainly the ownership is always like Tua. That's why it was very predictable that they would give him that long-term contract, because ownership believes in him. And, well, the guy writing the checks has a little bit of influence on things. Now you got two really good offensive tackles in the draft, and so both projected to go around this number. So probably one of them will be there, and they'll take their pick, and you depending on who you like, whether it's Will Campbell's tape or his lack of long arms is the matter of what you want to do with him or his competitor there. But at minus 106 to take an offensive lineman, I think is a very inexpensive price. I even saw some plus monies out there. These things fluctuate, obviously, but at the time of our recording, it is minus 106. How do they not take an offensive tackle, given the data that I just gave you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, Tua is obviously their most valuable asset, and you stress that with the statistical data regarding the one-loss record when he plays and when he doesn't play. But if you have a great quarterback and you can't protect him, then you negate some of that person's abilities. So it makes sense. Obviously offensive tackles are pretty coveted in this NFL draft. I know it's not as sexy of a position as quarterback and wide receiver and so forth, but the NFL places strong value on offensive tackles. So I think you're onto something there, and they need to protect him. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay upright. Has to have time to throw.
All right, let's go to another one of these college players there, over-under. And, boy, there's no doubt about this one, who deserved to be first-team All-American tight end in Penn State's Tyler Warren. He came out of Penn State as you talk about specializing. When you go through youth sports, a lot of kids want to try and specialize in one sport. And even some of the high school coaches kind of put pressure for them to concentrate on one sport. But a lot of coaches at the next level say, no, we want to see some versatility and play in different sports. And certainly Tyler Warren was all-state in all kinds of sports. And, man, he's just an athlete, and he's a ball player. Drew Allaire, and all of his kind of inconsistent season, we'll leave it at that, this past year. Man, that is a safety valve that you really like to have. Just throw it up for grabs for him. It was fun watching Penn State this year. It was certainly fun watching Tyler Warren, whether he's throwing or catching passes. His over-under is 9.5. Tight ends going to the top 10 don't have a whole lot of historical success there. And, Paul, maybe with the over on this one, as much as we would like Tyler Warren, yeah, that's very, very high for a tight end to go. You're going to go over 9.5, which right now is minus 162 at BetRivers.
Yeah, and you point out, first of all, Tyler Warren's versatility in playing multiple sports in high school reminds me of a guy here right next to my hometown of Tyler, Texas, that played at White House High School, Patrick Mahomes. Like his dad, Patrick played football in the fall, then he played basketball, then he played baseball. And he's one of those guys that didn't specialize. And it was very difficult coming out of White House High School, what sport he was going to play in college, which would be his best sport. So really unique. I think there's something lost there when these guys don't get the full opportunity to participate in multiple sports and so forth. So I like that about him, and there's no question that this pass catching tight end from Penn State is a big-time prospect. I really like him. A guy with his skill set can certainly add a dimension to an NFL offense. Draft guru Mel Kiper Jr. was reading some of his writings on Warren, and he pointed out that 700 of Warren's 1,233 receiving yards this past season came after the ball was in his hands. So he adds those valuable yards after catch with his athleticism. And not that he's going to be utilized in the running game in the NFL. He might occasionally, but not like he did at Penn State. This past season, he carried the ball 26 times. So a lot of carries on those end arounds. If you watch most of their games, I'm sure, for 218 yards. Guy's an extreme athlete, 6'5" and 256. So I say all these positive things about Tyler Warren, But the NFL draft, largely about team needs, and as you pointed out, the history of tight ends. We just don't see tight ends taken this early. Over the past, how many ever years it's been, the running back position has been another position that you don't see taken very early. You feel like you can maybe get the same thing later in the draft. But I like this guy, but most mocks show him going number 10 or later. A little bit of a premium to pay at minus 162, but not prohibitive. So I'll take Tyler Warren, the John Mackey Award winner, to go over 9.5 draft position at minus 162.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes baseball, especially that middle infield experience with those different arm slots, turning those 4-6-6, 4-3 double plays. You could see that in some of his off-balance throws, off-structure throws that he throws with Kansas City. Let's get to another team in their need, and we talked about it last year, and our buddy Brandon Stokely said, no, Sean Payton is going to get his quarterback. And it may have been a reach by some, but Bo Nix, he went and got his guy. Sean Payton is the final call on the drafts, both with the Saints and now with the Denver Broncos. And now they have two needs. They need a tight end and a running back at number 20. And I don't know if I think he's going to have the running back a little bit higher rated available at 20 than they will tight end. Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina has certainly risen up the ranks and is graded out very, very close to Genty from Boise State. So some people think that's a 1 and 1A, but and at a plus price at plus 140 for the Broncos' first drafted player to be a running back. And there's some history here as well. When the Saints were down to, I don't know, their seventh string running back in a playoff loss to Seattle, the next draft, he was going to get his running back, and he gave up multiple picks to overdraft Mark Ingram. Ingram was a fine pro, but what he gave up was way too much. Impulsive, not just with his challenges and certain calls with his flags on the sideline and game management, but also impulsive in drafting as well. And we think this is one of these impulsive moves. Also, Peyton is one of his strong suits is in the screen game. The timing of his screen games, both with Denver and with the Saints, really, really top notch. And this is a guy that's going to fit that bill as well. We know they want a tight end, but at this spot, I think plus 140 is worth going at the first player draft. The first position drafted by the Broncos will be a running back. So, Paul, plus 140 right there for the running back for the Broncos to take a running back first.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the need, and draft positions is all about need. And you mentioned Hampton out of North Carolina. He's certainly been one of the guys whose stock has improved and increased since the end of the 2024 season. So certainly you laid it out well there. And, I agree with you. I think Denver definitely could fill that need and could draft a running back. I know they're hoping Hampton will be available probably in that position at number 20, so it'll be interesting to see who they get there.
All right, let's move on. And the SEC, it has had the most players drafted for a long, long time, but on the field this year, it's a down year from the high bar that the SEC has set on the field. So still they are projected to take the most players in the first round. They'll probably have the most. But at 14.5 is the over-under in first rounders taken by the SEC. And, of course, Texas and Oklahoma added to that number to put it at 16. But plus 195 on the under, Paul, is a juicy price on under SEC players taken in the first round.
Yeah, obviously the depth of competition and just the week in and week out quality of opposition in the SEC, I think gives NFL scouts some level of comfort when they're considering taking a player from this conference. And you noted, and it's a big factor in this handicap, that they added two teams in the offseason, Texas and Oklahoma. And, oh, by the way, the Longhorns almost certainly going to have three selections in the first round, those being offensive tackle Kelvin Banks, cornerback Jahdae Barron, and wide receiver Matthew Golden. Excuse me. But everybody, loves the SEC. The House understands this. I believe you're going to pay a slight premium. Excuse me, I've got these dadgum allergies here. When you take the high side of these propositions. So I'm going to take SEC to go under 14.5 players selected in the first round at plus 195.
You got the Sankey virus working on you right now. But when you talk critically about the SEC, I mean, he has that effect on people. But anyway, I think it's. I mean, this is a number that usually goes over, but this particular year, I mean, you got to pay attention what's going on. And this is just not this is super special year that it usually is for the SEC. So, they had a lot of just misses. You can make an argument that some of those teams should have been in, and that would have been stronger. I mean, certainly the odds makers make some of those teams that just miss favorites over the teams that got in with some of the at-large berths, but we'll see about that plus 195. And I'm going to take a shot on the last one, and this is totally against history, because one thing the NFL teams do, they always overdraft. They'll always reach for quarterbacks. It's a quarterback league. Sometimes when they promote the NFL, you think it's tennis instead of football. You know, it's Brady versus Mahomes. No, it's the Bucks versus the Chiefs. You know, it's all the time. But anyway, I'm going to take a pass because this is such a light year. You're seeing a lot of whispers that the teams with the high picks are going to stay away from the quarterbacks. And I'm going to take a shot at under 2.5 total quarterbacks taken in the first round. Light, little gumbo money here. Plus 250 at BetRivers is available right now. A shot, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, the price, and again, it's all about the price. It's not so much about exactly what we think may happen, but at plus 250, that's a good return on investment there. And what it comes down to for you here is, will either Shadeur Sanders or Jackson Dart drop out of the first round? So that's your main concern there. Copper has Tyler Shuff of Louisville and Jalen Milroe of Alabama going as his first two selections in the second round. I don't think those guys are going to be drafted in the first round, but again, it's the price, man. Plus 250 is attractive, and you got to look at those things. It's not just will this happen? It's what are they going to pay you if the other side happens.
Good luck to all of you betting in the NFL draft, and keep in mind, it's not. It's one that you may be able to lay some of those prices that usually you stay away with. The one thing about it, the odds makers, this is their least favorite thing to book each and every year. And also, depending on your states at BetRivers, you will have some in-draft wagering, a couple of picks ahead, but those things are fun to watch as well. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott on the Sports Bettor's Paradise on the BetRivers Network.
Thanks for watching College Sports Rush's Sports Bettor's Paradise on the BetRivers Network.